The Welsh mountains were dark that night. Rain and mist drifted across the railway line between Torpantau and Tal-y-bont as a freight train descended the steep mountain gradient. For the railway crew on board, it was another dangerous journey through one of the harshest railway routes in Victorian Wales. Then the train began accelerating. At first, the engineers tried controlling the speed normally, but the heavy wagons kept pushing harder downhill. The brakes struggled, metal screamed against metal, steam burst violently from the locomotive. And then in desperation, the engineers tried to reverse the engines in order to slow the train down, but something snapped. The mechanism failed beneath the train, and within moments the locomotive and its wagons were completely out of control. By the end of the disaster, 4 railway workers were dead. And one of Wales' most haunting railway tragedies would be carved into history. In the shadows of history, some tragedies are remembered. Others disappear into silence. This is Bone Gavel, where forgotten history is brought back to life. By the late 19th century, railway travel had transformed Britain. Steam locomotives connected cities, ports, industries, mines, and isolated communities at unprecedented speeds. But in Wales, the landscape itself became an enemy. The Brecon and Merthyr Railway crossed some of the most difficult terrain in Britain. The line wound through steep mountains, sharp curves, and high gradients. This was constantly testing Victorian engineering. One of the most feared sections was the one that ran between Torpantau and Tal-y-bont. The route descended sharply through the Brecon Beacons. Even experienced railwaymen understood the dangers of this pass. Heavy trains descending mountain lines could become uncontrollable incredibly quickly. And in the 1870s, rail technology was not what it is today. Everything depended on the engine crew, mechanical strength, and how the train could be controlled under severe pressure. A single failure on a steep descent could turn a train into a dangerous force. And on the 2nd of December, 1878, this fear became a reality. Unlike many famous railway disasters of the Victorian era, the Torpantau Tal-y-bont disaster didn't involve a crowded train full of passengers. This was a freight train, a heavy goods train carrying cargo through the Welsh mountains. The railway workers on board were experienced men, and they were accustomed to working in these dangerous conditions. Freight trains during this period often hauled enormous loads through difficult terrain. Descending steep gradients required constant attention from the engine crew. The locomotive itself was incredibly powerful, but gravity could quickly overpower even the strongest of steam engines once momentum had built up enough on a downhill stretch. As the train moved on to the descent from Tal-y-bont, the crew initially thought that they still had control. But gradually, something became wrong. The speed was increasing too much. The brakes weren't holding. The heavy wagons behind the train continued forcing the train faster and faster down the hill. This soon became critical. As the runaway train continued to descend through the mountains, increasing speed, the crew on board desperately fought to regain control. Victorian braking systems relied heavily on manual force and mechanical operation. Once a heavy freight train had gathered enough momentum, there was nearly nothing that could be done to regain control of this train. the train thundered down the tracks. The wagons shook behind it. Metal screamed against metal as the wheels tried to hold on to the track. Steam filled the cold Welsh air. The crew attempted every possible thing that they could, and then the time became desperate. The crew then attempted to reverse the engines. This manoeuvre was incredibly dangerous, but if it was successful, it may have slowed the train down enough so that they could regain control. For the briefest moment, there seemed like there was some hope, but then something snapped. Historical accounts describe part of the mechanism snapping beneath the immense strain and pressure that was placed on it. The attempts to regain control and stop this train had completely failed. Now this locomotive and all its full freight wagons were completely at the mercy of gravity. The train continued to hurtle down the steep gradient, speed increasing constantly. The railwaymen on board realised something terrifying. They were now no longer trying to stop the train or regain control. They were simply trying to survive it. The runaway train eventually derailed with catastrophic force. These wagons, the freight wagons in Victorian times, were brutally heavy. Derailments during this time period were often very violent. The locomotive and its wagons were thrown off of the rails. Cargo was thrown across the place. Metal was twisted. Wood shattered. Steam burst into the air. This crash devastated the train and its crew. 4 railway workers were killed in this disaster, and several others were seriously injured. For those who'd survived, the scene was horrifying. Metal was scattered across the mountainside. It was complete darkness. Victorian railway disasters often had a unique sort of horror. There was very rarely any time to really react. In one moment, the crew were battling to regain control of the locomotive, and the next, everything exploded. In the aftermath of the disaster, rescue efforts started almost immediately. But conditions in the Welsh mountain were harsh. The isolated terrain slowed assistance, and emergency response systems during the Victorian era were highly limited. Railway workers and people from local towns attempted to help survivors where they could. Lanterns illuminated the twisted wreckage in the darkness. Steam was drifting across the Welsh mountainside. The 4 dead railwaymen were pulled from the wreckage. News of this disaster spread quickly across Wales. Railway accidents deeply shocked Victorian society. Trains and railways were a symbol of progression and modern society. But then disasters like the Torpantau disaster happened. It revealed the darker side of the railway age. Because despite all of the confidence surrounding the industrial age, it showed that these machines could still become deadly. Following the disaster, investigators tried to focus on how the train had initially lost control in the first place and why it couldn't be stopped. Attention quickly focused on the steep mountain gradient itself. The line between Torpantau and Tal-y-bont had long been considered dangerous. People even nicknamed it Breakneck and Murder Railway. Questions quickly emerged surrounding the train handling, the failing of the brake system, why the reversing of the engines didn't work, and the cargo weight. The snapped mechanism became central to the investigation. Had the train been put under too much strain? Were the braking systems inadequate for such dangerous descents? Or was the disaster simply an unavoidable risk of Victorian railways? Like many 19th century disasters, the answers were complicated, but the tragedy reinforced growing fears surrounding railway safety throughout Britain, because industrial progress often moved faster than safety regulations, and the railway workers were paying the price for this. The Torpantau and Tal-y-bont disaster reflected a larger danger surrounding the Industrial Revolution. The 19th century transformed the world through machinery, steam power, and transportation. Railways connected nations. Industries were growing, and travel became faster than humanity had ever experienced before. But behind that progress sat extreme danger. Factories killed workers, mines collapsed, steamships sank, and railways could turn deadly within seconds. Rail workers faced incredible risks every single day, especially going down the mountainous paths in Wales. The runaway freight train of December 1878 became a reminder that industrial power often came at a human cost. And for the railway men upon that journey through the Welsh mountains, that journey would become their last. Today, the Torpantau and Tal-y-bont railway disaster is often forgotten about outside of railway history. But on the 2nd of December 1878, 4 railway workers lost their lives battling to regain control of a runaway freight train. As the locomotive accelerated downhill through darkness and fog, the crew fought to regain control and to stop the train. But once that mechanism snapped, there was nothing that they could do. The tragedy remains one of the most haunting reminders of the dangers that were faced during the railway age, a time when steam power transformed the world, but safety regulations struggled to keep up. If you want more forgotten disasters, dark histories, and true crime, please subscribe to Bone Gavel. And let me know in the comments, do you think that the Victorian industry expanded faster than people truly understood the risks?